Push these to talk.
As long as the green is on, we're on.
Yeah, it's just on or off.
Yep. So the push just turns it off or on. So you're on all the time.
You can turn it off now. Yeah, you don't have to. Yeah.
Okay, Austin, tell me when you're ready.
Okay, just 1 second. All right, we shoot for.
Oh. Please mute YouTube.
There's our YouTube. I gotta mute it.
Deja vu.
Okay,
I wish I had a printed agenda. I guess I'll just pull out of them.
there we go. That's
You did
muted.
it right when I said.
And okay, recording and recording.
Can you change the display to a gallery display?
Yeah, I'll change it 1 second. I'm just going
Okay.
this, recording.
All right, thank you. Not a problem.
Okay.
Oh, that looks better. Okay, great. Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for being here tonight. This is the first time that we've had the majority of us here in the building and actually had some of the citizens here with us. It almost feels kind of normal. Your smiles look fantastic. So thank you for joining us. So we're ready to start the March 16th meeting of the Alpine Planning Commission. And we'll start with our roll call. So we have with us here in the building tonight, Ethan Allen, a member of Planning Commission, and Ed Bush, a member of Planning Commission, Sylvia Christiansen, a member of Planning Commission. And then joining us via Zoom, we have John McKay, who's a member of our Planning Commission. And who is the iPhone? Do we have, I can't tell if Troy Slade is on or not. Oh, the iPhone was Jed, so it looks, no, it's still
No,
there.
Jed has
It's
his
still there.
phone.
So we may have Troy Slade, who's also a member of Planning Commission. We're waiting to hear from him. And then
Oh, and Marla.
yes,
It
for
could be-
myself, Jane Greiner. And then we have Marla Fox, who is in the other room and records the meeting. She's from the building department. And we have Austin Roy, who is the city planner, and Jed Muhlstein from the city, who is the city engineer with us tonight. So welcome. Hopefully you can see the agenda above you. And there was some notes out front on etiquette for meetings. If you have any questions, you can ask, but basically most of the time, unless it's a public hearing, then we will have you come up when it's the public hearing, you'll come up to the pulpit and you state your name and your address, and then can speak at those times. Often during the meeting, if someone has a comment, even though it's not a public hearing, if you raise your hand and we have time, then we can take some comment on that too, okay? And there's no clapping or booing and things like that. So we'll start with a prayer by Sylvia Christiansen, and then why don't we go ahead and Ethan, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, since Troy, we're not exactly sure his status, so.
Dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be here at this meeting, to be members of the citizens of the city of Alpine. It's a beautiful city and we're blessed by the beauty of it. Heavenly Father, sometimes we're presented with problems that we're asked to help solve. And we pray that we'll be able to do this in a civil manner, and that as we make recommendations to the city council, we'll have understanding of what the citizens that are here have come to tell us, and that we'll be able to clearly form ideas of what we need to do. And please guide us in all that we do when we see these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
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 I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. At the beginning of the meeting, there's always a time for public comments. So public comments, or if you have anything that you would like to bring up that you have questions on or would like some discussion or help with, that's not on the agenda. So if anyone is here and has something that's not on the agenda that they wanted to bring forward, right now is the time for that. Okay, and did we have anyone on YouTube? If you comment quickly, or people sometimes will email us, and they can email in public comment for items not on the agenda. So Austin, I saw some comment on items that are on the agenda that were emailed in. Do you have anything that was not on the agenda?
No, just items from the agenda.
All right, so we'll move forward then with no public comment. So the first thing we have on our action items for tonight is the extension of a non-conforming building. And Austin, are you going to present that?
Yes, I'll go ahead and introduce this. So let's go ahead and pull this up on the screen so you can see what we're talking about. So this is located on 300 North. This is an existing house on that street. Okay. Hello?
Do you need me to mute everyone, or do you have the control?
Yeah, okay.
Probably just need to mute all.
If anybody else, if you could just mute yourself until you're ready to talk, just so we don't get feedback in the room here, that'd be appreciated. Okay, so as you can see on the screen here, this is an existing home. So this is a non-conforming home. Non-conforming means that it doesn't meet current planning and zoning standards. So you'll see that this home encroaches, it's inside the side setback. So our current setback, minimum setback is 12 feet for a home. And this property, they're at 10 feet, 4 inches. And so the way our ordinance reads, anytime anybody wants to do an addition or modify a non-conforming structure, it has to receive a recommendation from the Planning Commission and approval from the City Council. And what they're wanting to do here is add a new front porch onto the home. So you can see this little area down on the lower end here where my mouse is going. That's would be the new proposed front porch. It would follow, the way they've drawn it on here is it follows the line of the house on this west side of the home. It would still meet setbacks on the front, so from the street. So here's kind of a picture of what it looks like before, and this is a rendering of what it would look like afterwards. Our ordinance also has another thing that says any new addition must conform to the existing setbacks and regulations for the zone. So this addition, the way they've drawn it here, showing it inside the setback, would not be allowed given under our current ordinance. So some kind of modification is going to need to be made to this, where even if the Planning Commission does issue a recommendation of approval, they would still need to meet this, because we don't have an exception clause to allow for this where they encroach into the setback area. So they might need to kind of shorten this up on the west side or adjust their plans a little bit. But ultimately, they feel like this is going to beautify the home, make it look nicer, and just make it up to date. And so they feel like it would be a benefit to the community to have this addition. Staff has looked at this. You know, our ordinance is the way it is. With that modification, if they were to able to kind of adjust that by a foot on the west side and kind of bring that in so that it doesn't encroach into the setback. Staff would recommend approval of this proposal. So that's everything in a nutshell. I don't know if we have any representatives online or in person here. Oh, you are here. Okay. So they are here. Would probably be a good idea to have them come forward if we want to ask them questions or
Yeah.
Can I
things like
ask you a
that.
question first? Would you
Yeah.
go back to the one that shows looking down?
Yes.
Okay, so where are you saying that if they could?
So
Where are they encroaching?
yeah, so let
On
me
that
show you.
little
So this
spot?
area here, if you see this dashed line here represents the setback line.
But that's already there, right?
Right, so this existing home already crosses that setback line, as you can see. So it's at 10 foot, 4 inches from the property line. Our ordinance says you need to be at 12 feet, but this home has been here for a while, probably before the ordinance was created. So it's legal, it's just non-conforming, but any new addition would have to meet the current zoning ordinance, which is the 12-foot setback. And so the way they've drawn this on the front here is it does cross that setback line. It might just even be inches. I'm it's hard to tell from this diagram, but
Do they meet the front setback?
they do. So this dashed line right here, that would be kind of the 30 foot. And even if you carry this other front setback across, it's still well behind
Right.
that. So
So the only thing, it's a non-conforming home, and that's the only reason they're here.
correct,
Normally, they wouldn't even need to come in because they meet the setback.
right.
And you're showing that little triangle at the front that would be modified into this.
And it's really that.
And we're looking at inches there at this point on the front.
Yeah, it's going to be inches, not even a foot.
Yeah,
We're talking a matter of inches.
right. So based on some of our other discussion, I don't have a whole lot of problem with that right at face value. But we should consider all of the different aspects of this. So do we want to have the homeowners come forward and they can stand here to the mic? And then if you have anything that you would like us to know, go ahead and state your name and your address.
I guess, Jane, what I'd like to know is to make sure the homeowners
Mhm.
understand this little area right here or not.
So I'm Jill Carson. This is my husband, Steve, and my contractor, Chris Hill from Iron Ridge Construction is online.
Okay.
Okay, so he's okay.
So yes, this house was built in 1969 by James Moyle, one of the founders of this town. And I bought it in 1994. It was up a dirt road. Alpine Boulevard didn't even exist. Had to pass a pig farm corrals to get to it. And it sat there for 34 years before another home was built on the west side. My dad owned the property over there on the west side. And if we would have known it was non-conforming, he could have sold us 2 feet or
Yeah.
6 inches or whatever at any time.
Mhm.
So yes, we were just hoping, I mean, we've done some things to this home in 26 years. We've done a lot of things to beautify it, but it needs a lot of love and, it needs to get fixed up. And Chris has agreed to help with that. I don't know, you did see the picture. I did bring like a drawing, but it is up there. It would be, I mean, I don't know if it's possible at all to even consider that few inches on the left side because the gables are even on both sides and
Mhm.
the way that we've drawn it.
Do you have any options that do show it shorter?
I mean, if that's our only option, we will figure something out if we have to. I don't have anything.
Mhm.
We would have to change it.
Yeah.
A lot. It just seems like since it's been there for so long all by itself, it doesn't know it's non-conforming. It doesn't, we didn't know it was non-conforming either. And so, I don't know, our neighbors, I mean, I don't know, would be thrilled to have us do this, exactly like this. They're willing to write a letter, do whatever it would take to, because it would maybe encroach, on that easement just by a few inches, so.
Okay.
If that would help
Thanks.
at all, they'd be totally willing to do that.
Okay. Does anyone have questions for the homeowners?
So planning commission, you do have that ordinance, and I printed it off a
Mhm.
copy, so it should be in front of you, and then
Thanks.
I've just pulled it up on the screen as well for those that are online.
And is this an ordinance?
Some feedback.
Is this an ordinance that
That was
they
my fault. Sir.
can seek exception to, or?
So the way that it's written, if you'll see right here, so yeah, the only way to get an exception for this would be to go through the variance process.
Right.
That would involve going to an administrative law judge who would have to rule on this, and it had to have to meet 6 criteria. So, one, is it unique to the lot? 2, is it a self-imposed restriction? Meaning, did you create this problem? Is there a way to build it without doing that?
Yeah.
So I think it's hard. Usually that's the one that mostly stops most people could it be done another way? Is it a self-imposed restriction?
Mhm.
And so in my opinion, I don't think it would meet that requirement, but that would be the way to get an
Okay.
exception.
Okay, that's what I wanted to point out. So
Well,
you have a couple choices. You can have us make a recommendation, or if you'd like to, you could go to that variance committee with it and
The one
see
that
if
mostly stops
they
most-
would.
could it be done another way?
Oh,
Is
it's YouTube.
restriction,
When you start to hear yourself like about 30 seconds after you said something, and you're like, wait, someone's saying just what I said a minute ago. So you can do that if you want to. Like Austin said, it may not be exactly there. They may be willing to listen to you because of the size of this being so small. It definitely, I wouldn't recommend it if you were, 3 feet over and there were a lot of options. I mean, I think, you can change the roof line and shorten it. Obviously, I see what you're saying by, that's the natural roof line there to go all the way to the end,
Right.
obviously.
Right.
But you do have some options as far as like pulling it in next to the window or things like that. If you just want to make it simple and just make that gable a foot shorter, that just solves your problem. So there's kind of your 2 choices. And
So I think at
that's the
this
way
point,
around it.
If we could go forward with, if there's a possibility of getting the variance
Mhm.
to do it with that.
Right. So we can't grant that. You have to take it to
So
that committee.
What you could do is you can run 2 things. We can run this through the process that we're going through right now. So next week you'll go to city council, and if they approve it, you have that approved, but you would probably have to change your plan a little bit.
Okay.
But you could also still have the ability to go through the variance process. You could do both
Mhm.
and see
True.
where the cards fall and then kind of go with whatever.
So,
Then let's just continue. with
okay,
this.
so we could approve it with the stipulation that you move it in. a
We
little
would
bit.
recommend.
We would recommend approval, exactly, that it's done that way. And then, like Austin said, you could go have the city council approve that. And then if you chose to, you could still go see if you can get a variance for the full roof line.
Okay,
And then you can choose which one of those you want to
we
do.
would love that. if we could
Okay.
do that.
I'm
prepared to make a motion to approve it.
Oh, I have a question. We were just,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have a question either to Austin or to Jed, not to you, but kind of to follow this. So when we're looking at these plans and we're looking at the setbacks,
Mhm.
right? Is this the roof line or is this like the foundation line that we're looking at?
On these plans,
point.
I'm assuming it's to the foundation.
It
So
is the
we
foundation.
require that setbacks are measured to the foundation. So
So, one of the options they could look at is to still keep the roof line
Yeah.
where they are and then
Pull your
move,
foundation.
possibly move the porch just a little bit diagonally in.
yeah, that's correct. They
Right,
could do
as
that.
it comes in, and
Mhm.
maybe that would solve the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah, because we actually, I mean, if it's a
Yeah,
cantilever,
it's a
like
good
a bay
idea.
window or a fireplace that sticks out, that doesn't count against your
Mhm.
setback. Or the eave of the house.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you could bring your porch
Yeah.
actually in a few inches and leave the roof line with just a
Okay.
little more overhang.
Okay.
Or it looks like the far, the south corner actually just almost makes it to the setback line,
Really
right? So,
does.
you might be able to keep that and then just angle it in a little bit, right? So that it follows that setback line. So, yeah, so there's some options there, and that would kind of keep your roof line the way you would like to see it.
And from the street, it probably looked the same still.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it's because
Just
it
don't
looks like
get
such
your
a
right
small
angle
distance.
out. Yeah,
that
right.
you
The
would do
geometry
something like that.
teacher and me's cringing
Right,
right
yeah,
now,
yeah.
you
Put a
guys.
trellis there or something. I don't know. They never know the difference.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank
Thank
you. You
you.
can sit down. Thanks. Mhm. Okay, so any discussion or a motion?
Well, I have a question. Do we have to do an ordinance to approve this?
No.
No.
Oh, I'm looking at your sample motion to approve.
Let's see, did we write it? Let's see. I motion recommend the ordinance. Yeah, that's a typo. I apologize. Yeah, that
Okay.
should just say, I motion to recommend that the non-conforming addition be approved as proposed, or with the condition that they adjust the foundation.
Just a copy and paste error there, so.
Yeah, no, I recommend that the non-conforming, the extension to the non-conforming house be approved. That's all.
Okay,
It's
As drawn.
as
as
drawn.
drawn, yeah. That's
Okay.
that's my motion.
Okay, so Sylvia's made a motion. Do we have a second? Okay, so the motion fails unless someone wants to second it.
Well, I'll second it just so we can have a
Okay.
discussion
All right,
about it.
And for those who are here, as the chair, I can't make a motion or second it.
Mhm.
So if I just sit around staring, that's why. So let's discuss that. So Sylvia is basically saying it seems ridiculous over a few inches. Let's just approve this as is,
That is.
or recommend approval as is.
That is what
Is that okay for us to send to city council, or do we not have the authority to say that they can? Is it only city council that can grant that, or can we recommend to them that they grant an exception, or can they just change it?
So,
So
I
you want
mean,
to give us some
the
legal
way
parameters?
Our ordinance doesn't allow an exception. It's just not written
Yeah.
that way. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
that's just the way
Okay.
that the law is written. So we've actually made people move sheds and things
Yeah.
for a matter of inches. We've actually made people cut out portions of their foundation on their home, that the brand new house that they just built, because it was inside the setback. So
So in this case, we
By
don't have
inches.
authority to give an
Yeah.
exception. We only have authority to recommend what would solve the problem and make it match our ordinance.
correct. Yeah.
Okay, so Sylvia's motion, can we just say then that it dies, or does someone make another modification to that motion?
It would just automatically die. So,
Automatically die.
yeah.
Okay, all right, so we need another motion.
Okay, I'll make a motion. So I motion that we approve this exception on this, for this non-conforming building with the modification that they move the porch foundation within the guidelines of our ordinance.
Okay, great. We have a motion by Ethan Allen. Do we have a second?
I'll second that one
Okay.
too.
Second by Ed Bush. And any discussion on that motion? John, if you have anything,
No, we're getting
Right.
to where I was thinking we should be.
all right, great. All right. Are we ready? Any
I have a
discussion?
question.
Okay.
So is my motion still out there, or did it die?
It died.
Died.
So I can say aye to his motion?
Yes. Mhm. Okay, so let's go ahead with no questions. Can we go ahead and move on a vote on the motion? Okay. So with John being the only person that's not here, let's get your vote after. We'll vote here, John, and then just verify yours, okay? Let's make sure we've got it. So all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 And John?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion passes, and that recommendation will go to city council on the next meeting. And then they'll handle it from there. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the final plat, Ridge at Alpine Phase 5. And I think I saw Paul online. And Austin, are you also presenting this one?
I'll go ahead and kind of start it. And Jed probably has some,
Okay,
his engineering stuff that he'll want to cover as well. So,
okay,
but just to summarize this, what we're looking at tonight, this is the Ridge at Alpine Phase 5. So this is the final phase of the Ridge at Alpine. It's a 72 lot subdivision. The entire project was 189 acres. A good portion of that was dedicated as a conservation easement and as private open space. Some of it was, there are trails in some of the earlier phases, but in this phase, it's just simply, it's just homes. And so you can see the final plat here that's being proposed. It is 29 lots. And lots range in size from, let's see if I got, so 0.5 acres to 1.45 acres. Looking at this plat here, we've gone back and forth with their engineer, just kind of working out all the red lines. This is the most recent up-to-date version of the plat that we got actually just today. And so we've kind of worked out all the issues that we had with this, but right now, what you see on the screen here does meet the lot width and area requirements. So to back up a little bit, some history on this subdivision is it was done as a PRD, which is a planned residential development. So when I mentioned that they dedicated some of it as open space, what they were granted a higher density because of that. And so minimum lot size in a PRD, even though it's in the 40,000 square foot zone, the minimum lot size in a PRD is 20,000 square feet. All of these lots meet that requirement. The smallest lot in here is, I think it's about 21,000 square feet. So it is over the minimum. And then as far as what's being proposed here, these are all single family home lots. And so it meets the permitted uses in the zone. There are no trails in this phase. All of that was taken care of in the first phase, and they're wrapping up. All that stuff should be wrapped up by now. So, you know, we did get some good connectivity with our trail system in the earlier phases of this project. But in this phase, there are no trails, so we don't have to worry about that. Typically, we look to see if there are existing buildings. We did have some existing buildings on earlier phases, but in this phase, there are no existing buildings. So we don't really have any requirements to demo anything or like that. So, and the rest of it, Jed probably has more to say on it from an engineering standpoint, but as far as planning and zoning is concerned, it looks like this plat meets our ordinance, and we would recommend it for approval from a planning and zoning standpoint.
Thanks, Austin. Hey, before I get started, for those of us that are viewing online, all we can see is John McKay looking at his screen. We can't see any of the exhibits that you're showing. So anyways.
that's how ours were at the beginning, but
Okay,
now
let
ours
me,
look that way.
I'm glad you noticed that because we did not notice that here in the room. So
John, you're a star.
Yeah.
let me see if we can do
Close
something
up on
about
your
that.
face for 30 minutes online.
All right, well, while you're working on some settings there, I'll start talking here. So this is the last phase of the Ridge at Alpine. This is phase 5. It's going to complete the road system for the development, including a connection to Oakview Drive in the Alpine Cove area. So that'll be a great connector road to get done. We've already looked at preliminary design. We kind of go over all the roads, designs, and utilities, but there have been a couple minor tweaks since preliminary that I'll talk about here. In terms of culinary water, nothing has changed from preliminary submittal other than the fact that they have added a 20-foot water line easement on the east side of the property that runs for the length of the property. And I asked the developer about that, and they are just reserving that area for the future use of a potential water line there. In terms of secondary water and sewer, nothing has changed since preliminary. The whole development will be served as planned. We're getting a little feedback here.
Can you mute people, Austin? Are you the meeting host?
Yes,
So
yeah.
I think Chris,
Who
I
do we
think
need to
there's a
mute?
few people online that need to
Okay.
have their mute. It's just easier than calling them. There you go.
There we go.
All the storm drain in phase 5 is planned to be collected in this road system and then transferred to the ponds that were built in phases. Well, actually, it'll all be in phase 3 for this one. So that has all been already planned for and taken care of. At preliminary, we talked about the geotechnical reports and the hazard reports. And as previous phases, hey, now we can see it. This is great. As previous phases came through and were recorded, all the issues that the geotechnical and hazard reports talked about were always going to be in a future phase. Well, now we're in that future phase. And so now is the time to mention the undocumented fill, which the geotechnical report had mentioned quite a while ago. So on the plat here, you can see this pink outlined area that Austin is showing there. This is an area that the previous owner of the property had come in and filled in a ravine and done some other work up there. And we have no documentation on compaction for that fill. And so the plat is specifically calling out those areas where we know undocumented fill has occurred. The plat lists the geotechnical reports, so future lot buyers can be aware that there is this potential problem on the property. The geotechnical report also covers exactly what the property owners need to do to rectify the problem, which essentially is just them over excavating a couple feet and making sure they get down to native ground and then build that up with engineered fill. So it's more or less, I mean, I think they've done a good job of pointing out the potential problem. I don't think every lot up here is going to find undocumented fill. The ones where the ravine actually was, they're more along the lines of lots 14 through 18 there. So those lots are going to be the lots that will need to pay more particular attention to that. But anyways, they have pointed the issue out very well. This is, this is common standard practice of what you do when we know we have those potential problems. The hazard reports, they affected the setbacks on lots 11 through 18 or 19, I believe. So the hazard reports, there was one in particular that affects the setbacks, the rear setbacks on these properties, and that's the Rockfall hazard report. The Rockfall hazard report came in and specified certain setbacks that some of these lots had to have. And the worst lot is lot 15. You can see it has a 70-foot rear setback, and that is specifically because of a rockfall hazard, which was identified in that report. You can also see a little bit more of a squiggly line along the back of those lots. That line represents an offset from 40% slopes. Our ordinance specifically says that building, you have to, or you cannot build within 50 feet of a slope 40% or steeper. And as you guys know, the backs of these lots is basically the base of a fairly steep hill. And there is an offset from that hill, which will make these rear setbacks on these lots a little bit larger. So those are also shown on the plat. So as you can see, lots 11, 12, 14, 15, and 16 through 19 are all showing buildable areas, whereas the other lots in the development do not have those specific hazards on them, so they are not required to show the buildable areas there. So, long story short, we are aware of an ordinance and a couple hazards, and they are all recorded on the plat and well documented, so future homeowners or buyers are aware of that. Other than that, I actually don't think I have anything else to discuss with this plat. We had some red lines, Austin already mentioned that, and we've worked with the developer's engineer to take care of all of those, so we would recommend approval on this phase of development.
So Jed, this is Ed. I have a question for you. It has to do with the undocumented fill. And so the question I have is, on the summary here and the discussion of the geotechnical report, it says, and you mentioned that it would be known to the home, the landowners as they bought the property that was, the situation and what they were going to do. Are we working then with the developer here so that the roads they hand over to Alpine also won't be a liability for us in future years because of compaction problems?
Yes, it's also well documented on the construction drawings, and our inspector is very well aware of it as well. And to rectify the problem is the same result. We essentially over excavate by a couple feet and bring in engineered fill. So yes, we are very well aware, and we'll be looking for that as they construct the development.
Thank you.
How many feet down is it to the original? You're saying that you have to go down to the original rock bed and then build from there. How far down is it on the roads?
So that's specifically for foundations. In terms of road construction, the geotechnical report actually does not require you to go clear to native ground. It actually only requires you to go 2 feet deeper than you would normally dig for the road. Essentially, by putting a 2-foot layer of engineered fill in there, they call it bridging, bridging the gap. So you're essentially creating a bridge over that undocumented fill, and the geotechnical report specifies that 2 feet is all you need to do to essentially bridge the problem.
Okay. And the cost of that is borne by the developer who puts the roads in? Okay.
Yes.
So is this going to be developed all by a developer, or are the lots going to be sold individual for like custom houses? How is it going to be sold?
I'm not sure that really matters, but yeah.
I guess it matters to me because I just want to make sure that every single person knows that's buying these knows that this is not an issue is not the word I want to use, but about this discussion right now. How do we assure that so that it doesn't come back and bite the city of Alpine if houses start sinking?
By doing exactly what we're doing here, by recording it on the plat.
So whoever buys the lot will have it called out on their recorded plat.
Yeah.
So as we record this plat with the county, that will be called out on it.
Yeah, this is the actual document that will be recorded at the county, and you can see those pink lines are clearly outlined there, and that area is clearly defined on this plat. So
I guess I'm picturing the real estate agents in that fancy, pretty house at the front of the development, and they're telling them what a wonderful place it is to live, but they're not mentioning this. It's a serious concern.
Yeah. I believe Paul is on here. I think these are being sold for custom homes. The rest of the development is that way. And Paul, am I right that any real estate agent, or are they all listed with the same real estate agent, or how are they being marketed?
Hey Jane, hey, this is Paul and
Hi, Paul.
the commission members. Yeah, you're right. The real estate, we have 2 real estate agents that are marketing the properties. They're well aware of this. They disclose it to the buyer, but as Jed mentioned, the safety net, so we're not left susceptible to a verbal conversation between an agent and a buyer, is the recorded plat that each buyer will get a copy of, have the opportunity to review during their due diligence period on the property. So that's really the safety net to make sure that everybody aware, whether it be a custom builder or not, is aware of the undocumented fill situation.
Yeah, and it is hard because it is a due diligence. And you can't guarantee, you know, that someone's going to look, even though if it's in front of them.
Is it
So,
on that, would it be on the disclosure documents? Paul?
By disclosure documents, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
The seller's disclosure documents to the buyers.
mhm.
In a typical Rep C,
I'm not talking about the Rep C. I'm talking about the disclosure where you have to disclose any issues.
Mhm.
Will that be included on the disclosure documents like this? When you sell the lot to each individual?
yeah, that's usually, I think what you're referring to a typical seller disclosure section that's a part of a Rep C for the purchase of a home, a structure. I don't know with the land Rep C or with our contract that we're doing with customers, if it has a similar disclosure area. And even if it does, I'm not sure if this is a required part of it or not. So I'm not
Probably-
sure on that.
Probably something you could, you know, ask as a recommendation, but probably not something that we have any jurisdiction over requiring.
I guess.
But I
that's-
do understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, and as
I
a,
just want
as
to
a
make
real
sure that
estate
the
agent.
buyers understand it.
Yeah.
I mean, I spoke with someone today that was told that bought a certain amount of acreage and they were told about probably more than double of how many horses they would be able to put on that acreage by a real estate agent. And I'm
Right.
sure the real estate agent somehow thought that was
No.
true.
Yeah, but that's where we can't really control that. And so buyers, unfortunately, buyers do have to do their own, you know, research and go into their city and they need to look at the documents, and all we can do is provide that and hope that people do look before they purchase.
Yeah, and Sylvia, it's a very great question and a concern that we would have too. I mean, the last thing we'd want to have appear disappointed buyers, and they talk to one another, and it's a small community, and we again, outside of disclosing it on the plat, putting it in writing, telling our real estate agents, you have to tell the buyers about this. You know, we're not around for every conversation that happens, but we obviously want our buyers to know about it also.
Thank you,
Marla,
Paul.
Marla, you're really digitized. Do you want to go ahead and try?
Just on lots 16, 17, and 18, that pink line is halfway through that lot. Will these homeowners be able to build a detached garage or pool on the rear?
Oh, that's a good call out. So she's saying on lots 15, 16, 17, 18, that, you know, your buildable area is really narrow or is really small, and that they can't add detached buildings later in those areas because they're not buildable areas. So again, something else that I guess a buyer just needs to look at the buildable area of their lot.
It looks like the restricted one is lot 15. I see larger areas on
Yeah,
16,
lot
17,
15.
18, and 19.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's a good call out. I think that probably when they come in for their building permit might be a time to call that out.
Yeah.
I assume that we do that when people come in for a building permit, that we call out the buildable area of their lot.
We only call it out if it's recorded on the plat. A lot of developments are level and there's not the hazard to worry about, but when you do have hazards like this one, we do require the buildable areas to be on there. So, but yes, that is something we check when they come in for a building permit.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so any other questions, discussion? Paul, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think staff's been great to work with, and you guys are asking great questions to protect the public and make sure we're in compliance with codes. So, no, not at all. We're excited about it.
This is the very last one.
It
You've been
is.
coming in for years.
It
What will we
is.
do,
That's right.
Paul?
I know, we're gonna miss each other.
So I did have one more question, and it's probably just that, you know, as part of the sample motion, it was meet the water policy with Alpine Irrigation
Yeah.
Company shares. Is that just a standard statement, or there's
Um,
any issue there?
Actually, on this one, the development agreement specifically requires them to meet the water policy with the Alpine Irrigation Company shares. So that's why that's listed on there. The first one on there is where it's talking about address setbacks per the Rockfall study. That one has been taken care of, so we don't need to mention that.
Mhm. Oh, go ahead. Did you have another question? I just wanted to verify, I think I understood clearly, but I do know that there were certain improvements to some of the shared property, parks, trails, things like that, that had to be done at certain phases or as we approved another phase. Is there anything left hinging that should have been done before another phase was approved?
There's not. They've completed all the offsites of phase 1, which would allow them to move forward.
Okay. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Does anyone else have any other questions? Okay, well, we're ready for a motion.
I'll motion to recommend the approval of the Ridge at Alpine Phase 5 with the following condition of the development meeting the water policy with Alpine Irrigation Company shares.
Okay, we have a motion by Ed Bush. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Ethan Allen. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Any questions or clarification needed? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
John McKay? Aye. Okay, so the motion,
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. All those opposed say nay.
nay.
Nay. Okay, so we have one, I'm sorry, Sylvia. I thought I heard you.
You're thinking
Um,
positive there.
Yeah. So the motion carries and we'll go forward to city council for their further review as mentioned. So the next item on our agenda is a public hearing, which is probably why most people are here. So the public hearing is regarding changes or proposed changes to ordinance 2021-08 about large animals. And so this has been to Planning Commission and City Council a couple of times as we've tried to review and think what would be best for the city. So Austin, did you want to introduce that?
Yeah, so let me just give some history. So this has been on several meetings. The original origin of this was there was a proposal to remove the cap limit on how many horses you could have on a property. So right now, we have a limit of 5 horses per lot. That's the way the ordinance is currently written. So you can have up to 5 horses if you have sufficient square footage to have up to a maximum of 5 per lot. And so we had a situation where there was a larger lot. I think it was, I want to say it was over 5 acres for sure, but I can't remember the exact square footage, but basically it was a large piece of land. And they had multiple horses on it. And there was a complaint. And so it got the city thinking, it doesn't seem fair that, someone with the smaller lot can have 5 horses, but if I have 15 acres and I can only have 5 horses, that didn't seem fair. So the idea was, let's bring this to Planning Commission, City Council, and see if we can kind of work something out for these individuals that have larger lots so that they can have more animals. And so that's what was brought forward. As this started going through discussions, the City Council asked that the staff do some research to see what neighboring communities are doing. So what you'll see here on the screen, this is kind of a breakdown of some of the large animal ordinances in some of our neighboring communities. So you can see American Fork. They permit large animals on land zoned for livestock management with 1 large animal permitted for each 10,000 square feet of property that they own. And they don't have a cap limit. So no maximum. As long as you have enough land, you can have as many large animals as possible. So Draper, they have a minimum lot size starting at 20,000 square feet. So just to back up, Alpine City, our current ordinance, and this has been this way for a long time, Minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet for one large animal with an additional large animal for 10,000 square feet. So that's Alpine cities. And so, here in the Draper City one, we did in the comparison, they have a minimum of 20,000 square feet before you can get 2 horses. So you still get 2 horses, but in order to get the first animal, you have to have a minimum of 20,000 square feet. And then from there, it's the same as Alpine and American Fork. You get 1 additional animal for each 10,000 square feet. Highland was the most restrictive that we looked at. Minimum lot size of 30,000 square feet to have a large animal, but then from there, you get to start off with 3 large animals, and then you get 1 additional. Again, no cap limit on that. So none of these cities had a cap limit. And that's why it seemed like to make sense. Maybe Alpine City should do something about our cap limit of 5. It just didn't seem like other communities were doing it. And maybe there wasn't any harm in getting rid of that. So, in Lehigh, it depends on the zone, but in the permitted zones, you get 2 horses per half acre and no limit on 5 or more acres, or in agricultural zones. And then other zones, a maximum of 2 horses per lot. So they have a more complicated ordinance, but we tried to summarize it as best we could there. So anyways, this went through discussion. It's been to, I think, at least 2 planning commission meetings, right?
Mhm.
And so now we're back for a 3rd one. This time we're here to hold a public hearing. We didn't want to change this ordinance without letting the community know that there's a proposed change on the table here, especially given that it's a much different change from what our current ordinance is. And so the city council at our last meeting, I guess this would have been on February 23rd, made the following motion that they wanted to see a minimum of 20,000 square foot lot size for 1 large animal and 1 additional animal for each 10,000 square feet. In addition, they wanted to raise the cap from 5 large animals to somewhere in between 8 to 10 large animals per lot. And then have an exception that could be granted for lots that are over 5 acres in size. They could have even more large animals, but it would be based on a case-by-case basis. They'd have to go to city council to get that exception. And the exception would be based on things such as, how close are you to your neighbors? How close is it to the neighboring homes? What's the overall percentage of land? And then, how much area do the animals actually have to roam? Those would be things that would be considered in granting an exception. So tonight we're holding this public hearing to look at this. And Sylvia's, so one of our planning commission members here, Sylvia's put together something. I don't know if I have a copy of it. Do I have a copy of your chart that you made?
I'm not sure I'm going to use it.
Okay.
I've changed my thinking already.
But so I just created a visual here. This is similar to what Sylvia's kind of done, but I want to bring it up just to kind of give you a visual for what this ordinance is really proposing.
And also, I think it's important to mention that people who currently have horses would be grandfathered in.
Right. So
And so this would be only when people
this is not
sell their property to the
retroactive.
next owner.
So we wouldn't go
That's
back and say, if you have
important.
horses on your property, you have to come into compliance.
Yes.
So anybody that has a large animal right now or has a horse property would be grandfathered in. However, what would happen is if you ever sold that property would then have to comply to the new ordinance,
Current
whatever that
ordinance.
ordinance is. So
If
the
it
new property
changes.
owner would have to meet the new
Mhm.
ordinance. Okay, so here's what I wanted to show. And this is just kind of a rough idea. These aren't exact numbers, but just to kind of give you an idea. So number of large animals per acre. So if you have 1 acre, right, the way that this proposal is written, you could have 3 large animals. 2.5 acres, you could have 9. And then depending on what the cap limit is, it would cut off somewhere in there. But, 1.5 acres, you'd have 5, 2 acres, 7. And that's based on the thinking that you get 1 large animal for each 10,000 square feet. So that's kind of what it would look like in practice if that was adopted. Again, we'd have to work out the cap limit, but city council's
That might be
wanting.
good just to leave up.
Okay.
If what was adopted, what have we?
If the
The current
proposed-
proposed ordinance is being proposed.
So
tonight.
city council came up with a proposal.
Oh, the city
that-
council. did.
Yes, and that's what's listed is the city council. You'll see Jathan Thielen's motion there. And so basically they have the motion pretty much set what they plan to make, except for that they weren't quite sure if they wanted to put a cap on it of 10 or something like that, that we could recommend to them. They will choose. But then they wanted to have a public hearing on it again, just because they want to make sure that everyone has had a chance to understand the changes to it. Does the motion need to include, when we make a motion, should we include the grandfather clause? I didn't see that.
No,
anywhere.
we don't need to
don't
include
need
that.
to.
That's just the
That's
way,
always that
anytime we change your ordinance, the
always how it
grandfather
is.
thing automatically takes place. You
Does
don't
it?
have to mention
Okay.
that. Doesn't have to be a part of your motion.
Okay,
That's just the way
All right.
the law works.
so maybe before we do the public hearing, we should just reread this motion that, will you just reread the motion that Jason made?
Yes, I'll pull it up on the screen so
Okay.
everyone online and whatnot can see it.
So we're really clear before we discuss.
Okay, so this is the motion that Jason Thielen made. Jason Thielen moved that we table ordinance 2021-08 to go back to planning commission to have a public hearing on changing the minimum to 20,000 square foot lot size for one large animal and one additional animal for each additional 10,000 square feet. In addition, raise the cap from maximum of 5 large animals to 8 to 10 large animals per lot. Exceptions for additional animals may be granted by the city council on lots over 5 acres in size, with consideration given to the proximity to neighbors, proximity to dwellings, and the overall percentage of land designated for large animals to roam. Greg Gordon seconded the motion, and there were 3 ayes and one nay.
Okay, thank you. And so 20,000 being about 0.46 acres is where it would start at for, like you said, future. There was one other thing I wanted to mention is large animals. What is by definition large animals, Jason?
So large animals are defined as cows and horses in our ordinance.
And it also, if you notice on this, what he's showing now, it shows 1 pig and suckling offspring up to 6 months. So this doesn't, they don't count the offspring until they're 6 months old, correct?
Yeah, right. They wouldn't count against your numbers
Right.
until they're over 6 months old.
So
you
if
could
someone was
have,
breeding,
Mhm. So
that's different.
you could have, a colt or a calf up to 6 months old, and that wouldn't count against your numbers. You wouldn't be penalized for that.
Can you guys think of anything else that's important to bring out before we
Yes.
have the public hearing?
I would, oh, well, I don't know, should I
You wanna
talk before? or after
I
the
just
meeting?
wanted any clarification so that we
Okay.
know what we're looking at. So,
This is just opinions.
okay, yeah. All right. So let's open it up to the public
Can
then
you make
first.
sure that you tell them that if they're saying the same thing as
Yeah,
someone else?
yeah, we'll go over that. So we'll go ahead and open it to the public hearing. And you can come forward and you have approximately 3 minutes usually to make your comment. If we have to, we'll usually let you go on unless it's going on and on all night. If someone has made the same comment that you want to make, there's no need to say it again. So the purpose of a public hearing is to bring forward ideas, opinions, observations that you would like us to consider and be on the record. And so, we would love to hear from as many of you as would like to come forward. But again, if someone has said exactly your words, your thoughts exactly, then we ask that you don't come again, just for the sake of time. So we'll go ahead and open the public hearing for anyone who would like to come forward and comment. State your name and your address.
I will. My name is April Cooper. My address is 1136 Birch Circle. So a couple things. One, I just wanted to present my opinion that I do think this is a tough year with the COVID pandemic. And I think it's a tough year to present this type of ordinance. I think if somebody has, let's say they have 19,500 acres, which is, 19,500 square feet, which is 0.45 of an acre. They probably think they have a large enough lot to keep one horse or one cow. And we're basically saying, nope, you can't ever raise a cow, grass feed it, kill it, put it in your freezer, have some good food. We don't want to allow that. Nope, can't buy a therapy horse, can't have one horse, because 19,500 square feet is not enough. But yeah, there's a lot of lots that are 0.4, 0.45 acres that would clearly hold one animal. Then I'm having a little bit of a concern with comparing us to other cities. So I understand the research was done to get an idea, but I would have to imagine there's a lot of people that live in Alpine. There's a reason they don't live in Draper or Highland or American Fork. When Draper puts skate parks in, we say we don't want to be like Draper. But when Draper raises their minimum lot size to 20,000, all of a sudden we want to be like Draper. So it's really interesting how we use that argument depending on which way we want it to go. Now, Draper raised theirs to 20,000 square feet, but allowed you to have two immediately. We're saying one. So now what we're saying is if somebody has nearly 30,000 square feet, if they have 29,500 square feet, so they've got almost like 0.68 acres, that they get one animal. And a lot of people, by the time they have nearly 3/4 of an acre, they want two animals, like two horses. So I have a concern with the numbers that we're talking about. My preference would be that we just completely table this and you guys recommend that city council not address it at all right now. I think we have plenty of neighborhoods with CCNRs. There's some neighborhoods with HOAs. And our city is starting to feel like our planning commission and city council is becoming an overreaching HOA or CCNR on the entire community. They want to get rid of the rural feel. When you say we'll grandfather somebody that already has animals, are you asking people with small lots to hurry and race out and borrow a horse from someone next week before this gets approved so that they can have their animal rights grandfathered? So that's a little bit of a concern. And I think the last thing I have is, I just think you're making a bigger divide between the haves and the have-nots. You're basically saying if somebody can afford 2, 3, 5, 10 acres in Alpine, they can have animals. So if somebody can only afford a 16,000 square foot, 3rd-acre lot, they can't have one. So we're just creating a bigger divide. You're letting somebody have something that they consider valuable, that they have horse rights, and you're taking away property rights for the smaller lots. So I respect being able to talk, and I thank you guys for listening.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Brian Salter. I'm at 75 East Pioneer Drive. So I guess my concern on the 20,000 square feet that would give you only one animal is really two. One is, I think that penalizes people that would move in there. And if you're saying 10,000 is big enough for one animal, beyond that, it would seem like it'd be big enough for the one animal just by itself. My other big concern is that I think you're penalizing the animals also in that case. All herd animals, horses and cows, the animals you're talking about, are going to do better and behave much better if they're with another animal of that species. And so to lump it into just one for the 20,000, I think you make a harder life on that animal, make it harder for the owner to care for that animal because of what's hard about having the single animal. And you're probably going to have more horses bumping fences down and moving around if they're by themselves. And so I think there's a safety and a animal quality of life concern for minimizing that, as well as a public concern, because you just took away someone's opportunity to have an animal experience, again, kind of to what April said, because maybe they can't afford that 20,000 square feet, but they could in a smaller area. So I really am opposed to, I think it should, worst case scenario, resemble I forget what city it was, but they said you can, I think it was Highland, you can have two at the 20,000. Draper. The Draper one, oh gosh.
Yeah, Highland was like
Um,
30,000.
Yeah, but that I think has a big benefit for the actual animal care perspective. And then the other question I have is if I fortunately am one of the grandfathered people, so I'm speaking for mainly those people, but with the grandfathered people that have an animal per 10,000, would they have to deal with the cap from a grandfathering perspective, or would they be able to go over the cap even though they're under it for the 10,000?
They
Because
could
I
have
think
both-
my property
Can they get
falls
both
somewhere-
sides of it?
Somewhere in between, and I want to take advantage of both sides.
Yeah, I would assume that they would not, but that's a good point. We'll have to bring that up. I think the
Well, then let me
grandfathering would
register
more
my
likely
vote that
apply
they
to the
should
small.
Have no cap, but still be on the 10,000.
Sounds like
I
a
think-
deal.
I think that's how,
Yeah, I think it is too.
It would be.
that's
okay.
usually how things
Well,
work, yeah.
That helps me. I'd just say consider the animals and that actually what's good animal care, and you should have two animals with them.
All right, thank you.
Hi, my name is Troy Ellis, live at 607 East, 770 North. And trying not to duplicate what's been said, but just to kind of tie into some of those things. We've had an experience with ours where we've lost a horse, and so we've been down to one horse at and it's really difficult, like you were saying, it's very difficult for the horse because they're a social animal and they're much easier to take care of. But the other problem that we experience is it's hard to even enjoy the horse when we've got one, because for us, riding is a social experience. For me, some people like to go snow skiing by themselves. I'm not one of those guys. I would go snow skiing with a group or with somebody else or whatever. But it's the same thing here. It's like my horse, when we only had my horse there, it's really hard to go ride because you're now separating yourself from your family or doing whatever else because you're going to go off and ride and leave everybody else home. And so I look at the 2-horse or 1-horse minimum type thing, or 1 horse for whatever size, and just think that's kind of a bit restrictive. When we looked at the other cities up there, it seems like we're becoming the most restrictive out of those. Instead of trying to find somewhere in the middle, they're all allowing 2 horses for their starting point, and we're saying 1.
What is your lot size?
Thank you.
Sorry, I was gonna say that because I can visualize your house. So what is your lot size that your home is on and
I'm
your
about
horses?
3/4.
So you're on
but
3/4.
I'm probably one of those people that it might be just a hair under
Mhm.
if you actually measure it out. So I mean, I'll be okay with the 2
If you have
horses,
30,000, you'll be able to have
But
two.
but yeah,
Just out of curiosity, curious, and I guess anybody can speak to this if they want to too, but what is your feeling about the health of a horse being kept on a 1/4 acre? 10,000 is less than a 1/4 of an acre of land, and your home is on that. That seems like a very small area for a very large animal that usually would be moving around.
yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Wait, and you can come up. I would love you to come up and answer.
My opinion is,
Sorry.
yeah, that's small.
We just have to have it recorded in the mic.
Yeah, I guess I don't fault the 20,000 or
Mhm.
that type of thing, but to start off with 1, I think that's
Thanks.
inappropriate. On the other, I don't really have an opinion.
Yeah.
On the smaller one, I'd have to kind of look at that.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, but yeah, go ahead and come up. We're required to have you speak into the mic so that it goes on the recording. So,
We have a lot of people online too that
yeah.
want to
So
participate.
just go ahead and state your name and address.
You can take your mask.
Yeah, pull it down. We can't tell you what you're saying.
75 East, Pioneer Drive.
What's your name?
Honolulu Salter.
Okay.
There's professional Olympic riders and everyone on the East Coast that keep their horses happy and healthy in a tiny box. It's not the best practice for horses, but ultimately, if they're with other horses and they see a human every once in a while, they'll be fine.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And if anybody who spoke before, since I posed a question, if you feel like you need to answer, go ahead, but come on.
My name is Martha Williams. I live at 257 North, 400 West. And what they were saying too, it's all about how you keep the horse, you know, if we're still talking about that. Mine, the smallest stall I have is 12 by 24, but mine get out almost every day, ride 5 days a week. So it's the way that you keep them. I also have 11 garbage cans. We shovel twice a day. We put up a $5,000 fence.
I've heard about you.
Yes. And we put in a sprinkler system. We do every type of fly control that you can possibly have. I teach lessons. I have autistic kids that come. I breed, I sell horses, I buy horses. So at any given time I have between 4 and the most I've had is 13, and it was too many. And I learned that. So now I go between 4 and 8.
And tell us your lot size.
3 acres. So I'm on 3 acres. And when we moved in, we're the ones that were told by a realtor that we were allowed to have 4 per acre. So that's 12. But anyway.
I kept it confidential, Mark.
I'm an open book. Anyway, I love horses. I care about them.
Thank you.
And I feel like I started out saying a 1/4 acre was too small for a horse. I think it depends on what you're doing with it, just like she said. If you're getting them out and taking them to ride in an arena or up in the mountains, they're fine. And so I kind of backed off of that. I was kind of for it, but I backed off of it. I would just like to see less regulation, good horse keeping. That's all.
Yeah, I wish we could control that.
Yeah.
That's.
I'd like to get up one more time since you asked the question.
Yeah,
about the health
yeah.
On a 1/4 acre. So are you just seeing a lot of people with animals on a 10, 11,000 square foot lot in Alpine that you think are taking poor care of them?
No, as Austin mentioned, why this came forward.
Yeah, it seemed like it came forward with good intentions, like let's just raise the cap.
So
And it
we're
turned into something completely different.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
just wondering what you're seeing.
that's fine. No, normally when we review an ordinance, we look at the whole ordinance. Someone will bring forward the cap and we'll look at it and say, okay, it's been a really long time since this ordinance has been looked at. And we get asked by the city or the city council to look at these things. And so we've been asked to look at this ordinance in every aspect. We've been asked always, we research what other cities are doing because typically best practices, just like you do in business, you look at what the best practices for your industry are. And so we look at other cities and we look at what they have done and what, you know, and get ideas. So that's all just part of the research that we do. And in doing that, you know, some other questions will come up and sometimes we make a recommendation to city council and then city council will send it back to us because we're the recommending body. So we look at things and we make recommendations and then city council can say, you know, we don't think this is the direction we want the city to go. We want to send this back to planning commission, have them consider what are the implications if we did X, Y, Z. And so that's what we're doing tonight. None of these may even be any of our ideas, but we've been asked to evaluate them.
Okay, so are the 3 planning commission members and the 1 online, and then are you also a voting member?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so there's 5. So
There's
could
7.
each-
There's actually 7, but some people can't attend.
Sorry, just one moment. Could you talk into the other mic? Because I'm just online, they're telling me they can't hear in the
Oh, yeah.
other mic.
I'm just wondering how many voting members from the planning commission are here tonight?
5 and 7.
Okay, could each of the 5 give us an opinion as to if you're really concerned with small 10, 11, 12, 13,000 lots right now, having 1 animal, and if you see that we have massive issues in our city with that. If we don't, I would appreciate you recommending to leave the minimum at 10,000 and not change it right now and raise the max.
Thank you. We won't do anything with that right now.
Right. I would like to make mention that I think in the original planning commission discussion, we did discuss 10,000
Yeah.
versus 20,000. This wasn't just brought up by city council. This is
Right.
something that was also brought up, and we made the decision to go forward with just with the 10,000 at that time.
Right. And we were in, you know, it came back to us with the 20,000. So, but which is fine. And that's One thing you'll learn about government is it's not efficient, but it's effective. It goes back and forth a lot. Other comments? Does anyone else have comment that they would like to make before we close the public hearing?
Or at least hear the.
Do we have, Austin, while we're waiting, hi, would you like to make a comment, Breezy?
I would, well, Sawyer would.
Sawyer, we would love to hear from you. Do you want to state your name and address, Sawyer, for the record?
Okay. Breezy Anson, 633 Wilderness Drive. I've got no, problems with the way that the ordinance is now. I do have some issue with the cap, having so many animals, and have we done the research of how many animals is safely kept and how much square feet you need? If somebody's got 1.5 acres, 2 acres, but their barn and pasture space is not conducive to have 9 horses or 9 animals. Will that be taken in consideration? Because once you get to that point, if somebody just has a small pasture space and by code, they can have 9 horses, that could be problematic. Now, I also see people, I get frequent calls of saying, hey, do you know anybody that pastures horses? Do your parents pasture horses? I could see this being problematic if somebody making a business out of it. And it could be unsafe for the animals. So I would just like to see a little bit more research on how much space a horse really needs, especially if you start getting over that 4 and 5 cap rate.
Thank you.
And are you taking into consideration, somebody's got a large lot, but then their barn and pasture is small? It's not safe for the animals to have 9 horses in a small space.
Yeah, thank you for your opinion. Yeah, that's one of the challenges is as we've heard, there's different opinions and there's different ways of caring for animals, and we obviously don't get to control people's behavior. So, anyone else? All right. And then I believe we have some people who submitted an email, Austin, and will you see if anyone on YouTube has made comments? Go ahead and make any comments now that we can read in the public meeting.
Dean Turner, 159 East, 100 North. You guys just briefly glanced over conditions for the horses, maybe distance from the neighbors' houses, the condition of the barn and stuff. I just think that's a critical part. Because we don't want to adversely impact our neighbors. I don't think. I have 3 horses. If one of my neighbors come to me and said, hey, there's a problem, I deal with it, so. That's
great.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Okay. Austin, if you want to read any online comments, and then we'll close our.
Okay, so we have one comment emailed in here. This is from Steve Carr, 562 Lupine Drive, and he says, I just relocated from Washington State to Utah last summer after purchasing Intermountain Veterinary Services. I bought a 0.92 acre property in Alpine that was advertised as horse property and located within close proximity to my new business. One of the reasons we moved to this community was because it was horse friendly and still has a small town feel. Last fall, the city of Alpine approved the plans for my 2-stall barn. I own 2 horses. The building is nearly completed. Final inspection was recently approved. My fencing is already paid for and is going up sometime in the next couple weeks. My plan is to have my horses on my property in early April of this year. I understand that after emailing Austin Roy, the city planner, that under the newly proposed ordinance, I would still be in compliance as I have 2 horses and I own a 40,000 square foot lot. My neighbors down the street that currently have 4 horses on 40,000 square foot lot, will they be forced to find new home for their horses, or will they be grandfathered in? My concern is that as time goes on, further restrictions will be put in place. Years from now, will my 2 horses be grandfathered in, or eventually will I be forced to relocate because I am no longer in compliance with the city ordinance? So just to answer his question, he would be grandfathered in as long as he lived on that property. Anyone that a current property owner that lived on that property, owned that property in 2021 or before, I should say, would be grandfathered under the old laws, and then anybody that owned the property after those dates would have to comply with the new ordinance. That's kind of how grandfathering works. So
I also show an email from Mike Ball. Do you
Mike
have that?
Ball, I did not
Wanna
get that in our admin
In a-
email.
I
In
can
another
read-
partial answer to him, I would like to say that we have no control over what future city councils will do.
decide to do. Yeah,
know?
exactly. So this comment is from Mike Ball, 301 Scenic Drive. He said that I understand the city council is looking into changing the large animal ordinance so that new lots would need to be at least 20,000 square feet in order to have a large animal. I fully support this change. In fact, I believe lots should be at least 60,000 square feet in order to house a large animal. I see tiny lots with multiple horses everywhere, and it's just full of horse manure and flies. It's disgusting. We moved to Alpine last year, and we lived in Highland for 14 years prior to moving. Highland requires much larger lots in order to have a large animal. The large lots made a huge difference in the amount of flies and the smell, etc. So that was Mike's comments that he wanted to have. We all can have our own opinion. So we'll go ahead and close the, oh, go ahead. Yep. I'll let you make one more.
Troy Ellis again, 607 East, 770 North. With the current owners being grandfathered in, I guess the thing that I'd like to bring up also is if you sell it and that now is not grandfathered in, or they go into the new guidelines, doesn't it kind of like bring your property value down maybe? Because right now we, you know, if we advertise it as horse property or that type of thing, or have these type of rights, or we have the, you know, the rights that we have. I
Yeah,
just
it
kinda
can
feel like
potentially,
I
or.
think I'm losing some value,
Mhm.
you know, to be able to,
So-
if I ever decide to sell.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. So now at this point, staff, planning commission members and staff, anything you wanted to talk about?
Oh,
So,
yes.
Sylvia, let's hear what you have on your mind.
Okay, I've really done a lot of research today and a little bit yesterday, but most of the day. And you all know, or you might or might not remember that by the time I left home when I was a teenager, we had 320 acres. And we didn't even talk about acres. We just had a half a section. And so I've been real puzzled about how in the world you keep a horse. And we had horses. My mom bred and raised Arabian horses, and we had quarter horses, and we did cutting. And anyway, it was, I'm very familiar with horses and the horse life. And actually called my mom even and said, Mom, when we lived in Provo, I remember we had 1 acre. So I was like 3 then. That was a long time ago. And I asked her, how many horses did you have on 1 acre? And then we moved to 100 acres, and then we moved to the half section. And I asked her how many horses she had. Did she feel like it was comfortable? And it was less than what we're saying. But I told her some of the ideas about 10,000 square feet. And she's like, yeah, I think they'd be okay. But I didn't just talk to my mom. I did a lot of research online trying to find out, how do people live in a town situation and own horses? And I am 180 degrees different person. I didn't vote against the 10,000 foot for one animal last time because I trusted everyone else's judgment. But now I trust my own judgment because I've done so much research. So I'm completely comfortable with a horse being on 10,000, one horse on 10,000 square feet. Because I read a lot about stables and a lot about paddocks and the minimum sizes for paddocks, and they were all, and horses, how horses feel about it. And people are very comfortable keeping their horses on smaller properties. And I didn't know that until today. So I'm really glad I did that research. And so I'm confused right now because I remember last time the city council sent us something as a planning commission, we really couldn't change what they sent us.
Well, we can recommend whatever we want, but what they've sent us is what at their last meeting, their current thoughts were. But anytime they send it back, they're asking for another opinion and another evaluation. So, and one of the things that we're also have to keep in mind is every person in the city's property rights, and every person in the city, one person may feel like it increases their property value to be able to have animals on it. And the person who doesn't keep animals may think it decreases their property value to live next to someone who has animals on it.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying to consider every owner, every property owner, and represent every citizen of Alpine in the best interest. So.
And unfortunately, we can't please everybody.
No, we just have to.
But I just am glad that I gained a little more knowledge on understanding, because I just had no understanding of how do you keep a horse on a small property. Plus, I lived in Western Oregon for a while as an adult, and I had a friend who had a horse, one horse on a small property, and that horse just walked back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, and it just lived in mud. And I think the mud went halfway up to that horse's knees. And I don't think we have that same problem here. Western Oregon isn't Utah. And so I had that bias too. So I'm really glad I did the research, and I will even go to city council and tell them, be more specific on the research that I found as a citizen to help the people that have 10,000 keep, make that okay still, because I'm really a proponent of that now, whereas I wasn't last time. I was just confused. So also another thing, could you go ahead? I would like the most simple thing we could do is just the way it started and just say, go ahead and pull that up. Would you show the thing that I sent, the chart that I sent?
Yeah.
And keep it just the way that it was by saying, I don't know, I'm even looking at all the other cities that have no limit and just going for every 10,000 feet, let's just allow another animal. So, and that's not how I did this. I did it with every half acre, because I think once you get to an acre, you quit counting square feet. And so, just as an example, we can do like, if you had 3 acres, 3 to 3.49, you could have 8 animals. If you had 4 to 4.9, you'd have 10 animals, and then put some limit above that. So this kind of gives me a little bit more ideas. If you have 25,000 square feet, then you can have 2 animals. If you have 32,000, you can have 3. So that's all I have to say, is just that I did a lot of research. I'm so comfortable with recommending 10,000 where I was not before.
Thank you. Appreciate you sharing your research and your opinion. Ed,
And
do you
my
have
mom's opinion.
And your mom's opinion.
Well, yeah, I went and tried to ask a number of horse people in Alpine and outside of Alpine what their opinions were of this, since I am not someone who
keeps horses.
Although in Maryland, I did have a neighbor who had 10 acres and 4 quarter horses that we helped take care of. So I understand the comment where the gentleman was talking about that, the social aspect of horses, and to have more than just one, because they do interact, and they are like a family when they're together. I'm trying to weigh kind of 3 different directions here when we talk about the size of the lot. One, of course, is the rights of the horse owners that we have within the city in here. And, we have had this ordinance for a long period of time. And typically I'm of the opinion that unless there's a gigantic, or not a gigantic, but unless there's a real compelling reason to change something, we seem to be getting along fine. But, I'm kind of looking for the compelling reason. So you have the horse owner. Last gentleman who got up talked about, which I was glad that he brought up the point, is how does that affect the neighborhood in general? Especially on the smaller lots, right? So, Jane, I think you made a good comment. Some would view it as a selling point, but maybe the neighbors don't view it as much as a selling point.
It's really tight
to have it. And, we are wrestling with where is Alpine going from its rural history, but into kind of a suburban reality that we've developed into, right? And so we have to weigh that. And then Sylvia, I appreciate your comments on the horse itself. Of course, is something that the animals itself, we should be considered, we should, take into consideration. In my discussions with different people who've owned horses, they were not as comfortable with 10,000 square feet being enough to have a large animal on.
Well, I wasn't 2 weeks ago either.
Right,
so.
right. But I mean, I went to people who have horses and enjoy riding in here. So, I mean, I don't have a definitive, I'm looking still for more opinions, on the cap side, because we have really two issues here, right? We have which would put back to us was the square footage
Starting
idea,
point.
right?
Mhm.
You know, and then the cap, and, you know, just as a comment from a perspective of writing an ordinance, I don't think we really can have a range. I think somewhere Alpine will have to, if we're gonna put a cap in, we need to.
Yeah,
put
no,
a
I
cap in.
think we really need to decide. I
Yeah.
think what the council wanted, 8, 9, or 10.
No,
and
I've listened to
we hash
that.
it out,
Yeah,
yeah.
I watched that council meeting, so they did have opinion. I think Breezy brought up one of my notes in here. Breezy brought up, and he's in the hallway there. I can see him. Right. Breezy brought up a good point is, you know, as we get larger and larger of lot size, that does not mean we uniformly disperse the animals through that lot size, right? And so when we get to a certain concentration, when we say we have 8 or 10 animals, most likely they're not distributed through the acreage. They're in one area where a barn and corral is, right? So, you know, you realize that even though there's lots of acreage associated with this, that, you know, we're not gonna, you know, it's not a uniform density of animals. And so I do believe in having a cap, and then having the option of a homeowner going to the city council and showing less impact to neighbors, et cetera, and how they were going to handle a larger number of animals rather than that. And then kind of the last thing that I'm not sure we have any data on is if we were to change to the 20,000, how many lots are we actually talking about within Alpine that would get impacted by that?
That's hard to say because a lot of the neighborhoods do have CC&Rs.
Yeah, and that's the question
And
I
you would have
have.
to
Like, for
know.
example, you know, in my neighborhood, we have acre plus lots,
Mhm.
but our CCRs restrict only certain lots to be able to have horse property, in them,
Yeah,
right?
so
So even
it's-
though the city allows us to have that, the CCRs, you know,
Yeah.
are more
Yeah.
restrictive in here.
More likely it's the
On that
older
note, Ed,
lots.
Yeah.
a really quick way to kind of figure that out is we have our zoning and we have a TR 10,000 zone. So
Yeah.
anybody in that TR 10,000 zone, which is our
Pretty much
downtown area,
downtown.
would automatically be,
Yeah, especially down
you know,
here,
they would
because this is not
automatically
a
lose that right.
CCR,
Yep.
you know, homeowner association
the
area,
ol-
right?
the
Yeah, and
older
they-
lots
yeah,
the older
typically
ones.
are.
These are
you know,
the pioneer lots down here. So
Right,
there are
right.
no CCNRs.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
Well, and many of the subdivisions, I think up until, you know, the late 80s probably didn't have those. I know the Eastview area and that doesn't, so, okay. John, do you have some things you want to bring up?
Yeah, I like the idea that was brought up that it would be nice to be able to accommodate the socialization needs of horses. I just don't feel comfortable having even one horse on 10,000-foot lots. So if we're going to clean up our ordinance, my recommendation would be to say, okay, let's allow 2 horses on 20,000, similar to the Highland ordinance.
Mhm.
They allow 3, and we'll get to 3 by then adopting the 1 horse per 10,000 square feet,
Mhm.
and create a cap of 10, and everything above 10 comes to planning commission for approval.
Okay, that's great.
Was that a motion?
No.
I would make that a motion.
It does sound-
Okay.
it does sound nice
So
and
he's
simple.
basically saying that he likes the idea of having a 20,000 square foot requirement, but it starts with 2 animals and then 1 additional animal for every 10,000 feet. Is that kind of what you're thinking, John?
Exactly.
And then those with 10,000 square foot would be grandfathered in until the exchange of property would happen. So, I mean, none of the new subdivisions, I think anything in the 10,000, TR 10,000 is already developed, isn't it? Is there any open space left in the TR 10,000?
Yeah.
I don't know that
Yeah.
exists other than
I
downtown.
don't think so. I mean, there's some larger pieces of property, but
But they're out
theoretically be
farther and they're,
subdivided, but
yeah.
I
But
mean,
they're
everything
not
has
in the
something
10,
on it.
they're not in the TR 10,000.
Yeah.
And it'd be unlikely that with a PRD that they would get that small because of their location and the density near the mountains, so. Okay, go ahead. Oh, did you say something, Austin?
No, that was
Okay.
not me.
All right.
So I agree a lot with John, actually.
Mhm.
Turn this on. Okay, so I agree a lot with John. My neighborhood is mostly 1 acre lots. About half of my neighbors have horses.
Mhm.
And I do agree with the 2 horse thing, because whenever 1 horse leaves, we know about it because the other horse is complaining. Yeah, so we hear it. And so I do think maybe starting off with 2 horses on 20,000 would be a good idea. The other half of my neighborhood are all half-acre lots. I think there were 3 people that had horses there, and I think all of them moved, and nobody has horses there anymore. So it's almost self-happened that in those smaller lots, the horses all left. So I do think that the 20,000 would be an appropriate size.
All right, thanks. Let's see, other.
Jane, do you have an opinion?
Thank you, yeah. I actually, I still have some mixed feelings, but I tend to like the idea of 2 houses or 2 horses or 2 large animals starting at a ½ acre. I do think 1/4 of an acre with a home on it is really tight. And I do think you could have an animal be happy there, but I don't know that it's a good setup for a neighborhood. That's very close. I live, and I don't have anything against animals, and I live, if any of you know Will Jones, my backyard backs his yard. So I have camels and donkeys and peacocks and cows and sheep and a kangaroo in my backyard. So, but you know, there is an impact to the community that you're in. And it, you know, so that's my opinion. I do also don't think that we have a lot of 10,000 square foot lots that will be coming into Alpine. And so I like the idea of having it be a ½ acre with 2 animals. That's where I stand on that. So, but in the end, whatever we recommend, we are only a recommending body, no matter what we decide here, whether it was 10,000. And I think it's important to point out that we actually have sent an ordinance forward already one time saying to just leave it alone. I believe, was that our first recommendation, was to leave it the way it was? And it's come back.
I think it was.
Yeah. Anyway, we could research that. So in the end, we are recommending what we think. So other opinions, considerations, I think that a lot of good points were brought up here. I've definitely had a change of opinion as well on a couple of things. I liked Ed's comment that unless there's a compelling reason to change, and that part of me lends towards if there is a reason to change the 10,000, you know, that part of me thinks, have we had a problem? Has that, and maybe Austin, you could answer that for us. What kind of issues have we had in the 10,000 square foot area with animals? I know we've had some complaints. I don't know if it's a big deal. I don't know if we have any idea of how many animals are in that area. What
Honestly,
do you know about that?
All of the complaints that we received have been on larger lots. So the 10,000 square foot lots, we haven't actually had, since I've been with the city for 4 years, we haven't had any complaints. Ted Stillman, our old code enforcer, who was the previous city manager, he's been with the city, he was with the city 20, 30 years ago, and he doesn't recall any complaints on the 10,000 square foot lots.
So I think that's a valid point to consider, is that like you said, Jed, if it isn't broke, my personal opinion would be probably that that's too small, but that doesn't mean, if this has been existing. So I think that's a consideration, even though, but like, as I mentioned before, that may be something that's an absolute no-go with city council. So
people that love horses just love their horses so much, though. That's what my mom lived in Wyoming on a ranch, and her dad died and she had to move to California. When she was 9 years old, she always went to a stable that was near her house. A little baby boy horse was born, and the owner of the stable said, if you pay for the vet bills, you can have this horse, because it wasn't healthy. I grew up riding that horse and she never, never had a
Yeah.
vet. And she had that since she was 9 years old.
Well, one thing
just-
about the 10,000 is that it would be just one horse too. And so
Yeah.
the socialization aspect is gone. So let's take a look at this ordinance. Let's get to the meat of what we need to look
Right,
at tonight, because I think, you know, if we just ask 100 people, we could have 100 opinions. And, you know, I know how passionate we are about animals. I have animals that I'm very passionate about too. So let's take a look at this.
Another thing we need to consider is not just horses. I mean, it's,
Cows.
yeah, goats,
Mhm.
you know.
Well,
Well, I think this is just horses and cows. These are
We have a
just-
separate ordinance for
Oh,
goats.
Yeah.
Right.
So
And
these
for
are
pigs.
just horses and
Oh, you're
cows.
right. I see. Okay.
And I don't see anything
But they're
on,
no
I don't
different.
see anything on a colt on this or a.
Well, they call it a suckling
Yeah, but
offspring.
I don't see that in point one.
Yeah, it is at the
Yeah,
very
yeah.
top line.
One horse
Oh,
and cow
thank
and
you.
suckling off.
Thank you. I'm just looking down to the green. Okay, thank you. So that's another thing to consider. So you could have a cow and a calf. Up to 6 months.
And as you discuss this, as we look at this a little bit more in depth, I would kind of encourage you to kind of take into consideration that little chart. I'm trying to find it, that we pulled up,
Yeah.
this one here. So as we consider a cap, kind of
Right.
keep that in mind
Mhm.
as we discuss
Right.
the 8 to 10, or if you choose a different number, whatever.
Right, okay. So let's talk about that for a while. Let's talk about a cat. Let's talk about what we feel about a cat. So you're looking, the way you had 5 acres there was it showed up to 19. Yeah, there's a little bit on difference on the numbers there, but.
These are just rough numbers, so these are
Okay,
not exact
that's fine.
numbers, but it's
So.
to help you visualize.
So 5 acres would have, 15 maybe, which is. And so. Do we have large parcels still? We do have some really large parcels that have animals on
We
them.
do. We actually have, there are several around town. I mean, there are actually some that have horses on them right now. So the Mendenhall Ranch, they have
Right.
many horses. We have Bridle Up Hope. There's a
And the
couple on
cap
the
just
east side
doesn't
of
make sense on
town.
some of these really big ones. They just have been out of compliance.
Yeah, essentially they're kind of I don't know if they're grandfathered in or, I mean, to be honest, our code enforcement operates on a complaint basis.
That's
So
right.
if we don't receive complaints about it, we're not out there hunting people down.
Yeah,
So,
you're not out counting horses during the
Right.
day.
yeah,
In your spare
exactly.
time.
Yeah. Because we don't have anything better to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right, so let's talk about caps really quickly. How do you feel about a cap? I mean, their suggestion was possibly a cap of 10, given the fact that the city is in somewhat of a transitional city, meeting the needs of both types of citizens, but any feelings about?
So
whether we should have a
they
cap?
also recommended that a person could go over the cap
If they came
with
in.
approval,
Right.
right?
Right, I think
And
that's what it
so-
is. They just wanted to put some control over it so that, as Breezy mentioned, the entire property wasn't used up with buildings and outbuildings, and then they had
So-
20 horses.
So
on
on
it,
that
you know.
basis, I would be more in favor of a lower cap, because then we have more control.
So the cap, and
over what
also to keep in
happens.
mind, the cap applies to, it's pretty much anything under 5 acres. So it's that area in between 10,000 square feet up to 5 acres. Then the 5 acres, they can get an exception to have more at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if
Right.
you were to look at your chart here, if we were to cap at 9 to say,
Mhm.
right, it would be 2.5 acres, 9, 3 acres, 9, 3.5 acres, 9,
Right.
4 acres, 9,
Right.
until you got to 5, and then you could
Go for the
could
exception.
petition to the city
Mhm.
council.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, so given that, always if there is a method for someone to get an exception when it's a reasonable situation, that also adds some color to what we're talking about, so think about cap size. I don't know if you have any opinion on cap size, Sylvia. 8, 9, 10, something along those lines is what they're
On the
kind of
chart
looking for.
that I made, I went up to 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that by adding one animal per each
Mhm.
half acre.
Mhm.
So rather than square footage, because we quit talking square feet after
Uh-huh.
so long. But-
Okay.
But so my cap was 15, but I wouldn't, I like the fact that they're willing to entertain more than what they wanted their cap to me.
Mhm.
But it also adds more work for the staff. And I just think that we could get that done now.
Okay.
Or maybe.
So
add
you're
something in
saying,
the
you're
bus-
saying to do a little bit of a higher cap so
Yeah.
that less people come
Well,
forward.
like that, so that they don't have to deal with government all the time.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay. All right. Ed, do you have anything you want to share?
The
on
only
that
other thing
cap?
that I would wonder is I would like to see that some caveat is put in there that the animals are taken care of, but.
Well,
again,
goes under the nuisance ordinance. I mean,
Oh,
you've
okay.
got animal cruelty you can report to, but if there's a nuisance, anyone can report. If there's a smell nuisance, there's flies, you know, that can only just be enforced under the nuisance ordinance. You really can't dictate how often somebody shovels manure.
Well, and I'm not saying that, but just like the animals, like if they're not trimming their feet, who do they report it to?
Animal, you know, you have to, animal cruelty,
It's
so.
probably the police.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
we
the
can-
police department has an animal control
Mhm.
unit, so you can call them and they have separate, they have like the nuisance and they have the animal. I mean, the animal cruelty and that kind of stuff is looked at, and smell and other things, flies and rodents, that
Okay.
kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I'd be willing to go up to 15, but
Okay. All right.
like I said, I'm glad they're willing
If
to.
does anybody else have any thoughts, John or Ed or anyone on caps that you want to discuss?
Sylvia, are you suggesting that you're good with 15 for under 5 acre parcels?
I think we could do 15 on 10,000 square feet, don't you, John?
Yeah, she is saying 15 is the cap on under 5 acres. Then after that, they would come in.
Oh,
for-
no. Well, what I have is, okay, at 5 acres, I have 12
Okay, so would you
So-
want to put a cap at 12? then?
on my
Because-
chart. If we're going to 5 acres, it's 12. Well,
Okay.
that's 5.5 actually,
But
but it's-
yeah,
So what do you have on your chart for 4 acres?
for 4 acres, I have 10.
were you adding one for every quarter
Half.
acre?
I was adding one for every half acre.
It's actually one per every quarter, every 10,000 square
Quarter
feet.
acre, you're right.
so-
I'm doing one for every quarter acre.
Okay, I just want to
Yeah.
make sure because you'd said half, so.
I think I wrote it half on that, but it's quarter acre.
Mhm. So you'd be more interested in going up to like a 12 for the cap.
3.5 to 3. No, I'm doing one for every half acre
Mm-hmm.
here, actually,
Okay.
is what I've done on my
Yeah.
chart.
John, did you have some thoughts on that?
Well, I think we've heard comments from our citizens here tonight that I believe it was 3 acres. Having 12 horses on it was too much.
Mhm.
That's a good data point for us.
Yeah.
Without imposing additional requirements on a landowner, I think 10 on these smaller lots is a reasonable number.
Okay, thanks. Do you have anything you want to add? Okay. All right, so there's been some discussion on the cap. And we've had some discussion on the starting square footage of 10 versus 20. And we've had some discussion on the starting number of animals, 1 versus 2. And so let's go back to what.
So we've solved nothing.
Well, we've heard a lot of things. We've enlightened, we've become enlightened, right? And
Could I add one more thing?
Uh-huh.
If anybody does any research like I did, please be aware that there's 2 numbers for a minimum suggestion.
Mhm.
There's, if you're grazing the horse on the property,
Mhm.
it's gonna be much bigger. And if you're not, then it's gonna be
If you're
smaller.
feeding it.
So just be aware of that.
Thank
In case someone else does the research that I did.
Right. And also just for everyone, including Sylvia's best, you can write your city council members and give them your thoughts and feelings before the meeting. It is not a public hearing. The public hearing is held here. They will get the information from us.
Yeah, but they always let you.
I want to, yeah, they do, but they're not going to take a large number of citizens because they don't have the time for a public hearing. That's why we do them. So looking back to the motion, let's just look. They ask it to be sent back to the planning commission to hold a public hearing on the proposed change. And then also we need to take a look at, we have here that we are taking feedback. Let me just verify, Jason, that we are making another recommendation.
Yes, tonight, this will be a new
We're
recommendation.
making a new recommendation, but
But you
they
should take into
sent us-
consideration Jason's motion and then the feedback that we've received
Right,
tonight.
because that's kind of where they were and basically considered approving that, but wanted a public hearing on it. So that doesn't mean that with more information and insight, that's what they'll do. So anyway, so I would ask the planning commission members to read through what Jason has. And if anybody is ready to make a motion, we could listen to a motion. And
I'm not gonna make
If
a
we
motion. I
have-
already know I'm outnumbered.
you don't know. But anyway, go ahead and any more discussion or a motion is where we're at right now. So
I'll make a motion that, oops, well, yeah, okay.
yep, we can hear you.
I'll make a motion that we amend ordinance 21-08 that 2 horses or cows in suckling offspring up to 6 months shall be permitted on a 20,000 square foot lot. And the remainder of the suggested ordinance be the same, with the exception that we have a maximum of 10 animals per lot.
Okay, so we have a motion by John McKay. Do we have a second? And seconding the motion doesn't mean you have to vote aye. It just means we can discuss it. So,
I'll second that.
all right, so we have a second by Ethan Allen. So is there any question on what John motioned? Okay, so basically, it's starting at 20,000, but starting with 2 animals. So keeping the starting square footage the same, but adding another animal to it right from the beginning. And then adding the 10 large animals as the cap. But everything else stays the same with consideration. They can be granted additional animals by city council on lots over 5 acres. Okay. All right, so we will go ahead and take a vote on this motion. And those in favor say aye.
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 And those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, so we have that motion carries. Either way, it would go, just so you know, even if it had a negative, it goes forward to city council. This is just a recommendation and then they take what they, the recommendation is and go from there. So, okay. So that is the last item on our agenda for tonight. And the next thing we have is communication. So do we have anything in communication, Jason?
So just April 6th is spring break, so we will
Okay.
not have a meeting that day. Our next
Okay.
meeting will be April 20th.
Okay, so no meeting April 6th. Good.
That's good.
All right, and then
Are we on live meetings from now on?
it's optional. You can come in or you can stay home right now. But we do have an anchor location here at the city hall. And so we have to have someone anchoring the meeting in this location.
Okay.
Unless we decide to send out another notification, but I think it's probably we'll go forward with anchoring the location.
Excuse me, if you do have conversations, could you please take them out into the hallway? We're not done
Yeah,
with the meeting
thanks. We
yet.
just got to finish.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much for coming.
Thank
We really appreciate hearing from you. So, okay, the last item we need to take care of is the minutes. So did anyone have any changes they wanted to make to the minutes?
Mine died and I can't pull them up. It does show that I was not in attendance. right?
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion?
Yes, you were excused.
All right, I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as stated.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so a motion by Ethan Allen and a second by Ed Bush. All in favor? Say aye.
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 And any opposed? Okay, do we have a motion to close the meeting?
I'll make a motion to close the meeting.
I'll second it.
Close the meeting and it's seconded by
John?
Ed?
John. already-
John.
Oh, John seconded it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
he
right.
was very quick on that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned
All right.
and ended